As part of any late diagnosis of autism, I think it's really common to look back at our whole life to look for clues that we were autistic or are autistic that were missed by those around us. So today I'm looking at unusual traits and behaviours that I had as a undiagnosed autistic girl. So let's get started with number one. So at number one, terrible posture. And this is something that I've just always had. I just naturally kind of hunch myself over, so my shoulders are very kind of rounded, and in fact my spine is actually quite curved as well, so it just all lends itself to this terrible posture really. And although the area does need a lot more research, like many areas of autism, it is known that many autistic people do have motor impairments, which affects their postural control. And I think as part of this, I always, as a young girl, shuffled my feet while I was walking. And my mum and dad would constantly shout at me over this, pick your feet up. They were both Scottish, but yeah, it was just something that I always did. I found it really difficult to just kind of walk normally, really, and with confidence that we see in many other people. And I'm going to add toe walking in with this as well, or walking on your toes, because I used to do this all the time as a young girl. And I honestly thought it was because our house, like many houses in the 70s, was freezing, and we had tiles in the hallway. It was quite a long hallway, so I just thought that I walked on my toes because it's kind of less surface area to feel cold by the tiles. But I do wonder now if this actually was an autistic trait, because although all children will walk on their toes, and particularly when they're learning to walk, when they're a toddler, if this behaviour persists well into childhood, it could well be an indicator of autism. So at number two, I was a really fussy child when it came to foods, and in fact I just didn't really like eating at all. And we know that many autistic children really struggle with food for a variety of reasons. It could be sensory issues, so they may struggle with the taste or the texture or the sounds of food while they're eating. And some autistic children may well struggle to eat within a school setting. And like many Scottish families, we ate meat and potatoes quite a lot, and it just never appealed to me whatsoever. And my mum would forever be trying to force me to eat meat-based Scottish foods such as lawn sausage or square sausage, Scotch pie and Scotch egg, which has sausage meat in it. And it was all just so horrible. And I would love to know if any Scottish viewers out there had similar issues with this kind of food. I had a real thing about meat, actually, or meat from a joint, in that I just physically was unable to eat it. I would find that I'd chew and chew and chew, and I just wouldn't be able to swallow it because it became like string in my mouth, really, and I choke a lot of the time. So I just wasn't able to eat it, and I, would send my mum mad over this because she just would not understand why I just couldn't eat it. And in fact, the only things I remember really liking eating as a child were crisps, which I still love, and pickled onions. And I would happily eat a jar of pickled onions if anybody let me, because I really, really loved them. So yeah, I was just really fussy with food. And this did get easier actually as I entered adulthood, although I did gravitate only really towards a few dishes that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I think this is a common one actually for autistic children. At number three is hair chewing. And I've always had kind of longer hair, so I, had long hair as a child, but I would chew and chew and chew my hair consistently. And now I realise that it was an autistic stim. And again, this was something that would send my parents mad. I just feel like in hindsight, any of my exaggerated autistic traits just really were not tolerated very well by my parents. It's, yeah, really interesting to look back on. But yeah, I was just obsessed with my hair really, and yeah, lots of memories of chewing it. At number 4, I really struggled with any kind of enforced movements, by which I mean swings or roundabouts or fairground rides such as roller coasters or the scramblers or the waltzers, and even car journeys. I just really struggle with movements. It makes me feel really uneasy. And in fact, I broke my leg on a swing, and it wasn't a conventional swing actually, it was kind of like the other way. So it was really long, so it was designed to kind of sit on, kind of like a boat. So it had various children on it and they'd swing at the same time. But I was so unnerved by the experience, I clambered off, and during which time I broke my leg. So yeah, that kind of probably exacerbated my fear of swings. But yeah, I've just never liked anything like that. And still in adulthood, I struggle with enforced movements, really see with any kind of transport as well. So yeah, it's a struggle. And I've been really interested to learn actually that my aversion to movements or enforced movements may well be down to proprioception, or the proprioceptive sensory system, which is all about a subconscious awareness of where our body is in space. And this blog post by Dr. Neff, who's an autistic psychologist, is so interesting. And it turns out that I'm a proprioception avoider. And an example of this could be when a child avoids physical contact, such as hugs, and I hated hugs as a child, or avoid swings and slides and other playground equipments. And they may become anxious in crowds, and I've always had real issues with crowds. I just hate being surrounded by lots and lots of people. At number 5, I had and still have a real issue with any kind of coordination. So I couldn't swim as a child, and in fact, I still can't swim. I just cannot figure out how to do it. And it took me until I was about 9 or 10 before I learnt how to ride a bike. And I really enjoy riding bikes now, but yeah, it really didn't come naturally to me at all, and it took me quite a long time actually to learn once I started wanting to ride a bike. So, yep, no coordination whatsoever. At number 6, as a young girl, I just didn't understand pop group fandom, and I really didn't understand fashion either. And given it was the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot to be excited about really. I just didn't like the fashion at the time. But of course, when you're trying to fit in with other girls at school, this can cause enormous difficulties really, because there's various things that you can't relate on. So I'd just lie and make up that I really liked various pop groups at the time. Wet, Wet, Wet and Bros are springing to mind, but also I had, similar stuff going on with fashion really. And yeah, I'd probably wear stuff that I wasn't wholly into, really as a result of trying to fit in really. At number 7, and I think this is a common one for autistic children, is that I much preferred conversation with adults. So whenever I'd go somewhere that had children and adults, such as going to my aunt and uncle's every summer in Scotland, I would much rather be talking to my aunts than my cousins really, because I just couldn't relate to them. And this carried on actually into early adulthood. I just found that I had more in common with people that were kind of significantly older than me really. So yeah, I just couldn't relate to other children at all, really. At number 8, I hated and still don't like group activities, and I would really struggle with this as a young girl because I just wanted to do whatever activity it was, generally at school, on my own, because I could concentrate fully on it and didn't have to talk to anybody or try and come to kind of some shared end result with somebody, because of the whole kind of negotiation that goes with that it's a real skill in itself, and many autistic people really struggle with this, and I certainly did and still do. So I would do whatever I could just to work on projects on my own, really, and this actually carried on way into college life as well. I was a mature student in my 30s. I went back to art school and I still hated any kind of group activity, and yeah, I would just really try and wangle things so I could work alone, really. And often the case, it wouldn't work out and I would have to work in groups of people. But yeah, I just really, really struggle with it. And also, I should mention that I was always, always chosen last in any sports activities at school. And of course, when this is kind of repeated over and over, it's yeah, pretty humiliating as an autistic child. And I hated it. I hated PE sessions where I knew that there'd be some kind of team activities going on, because I'd always be chosen last. At number 9, I found it almost impossible to use slang words or phrases as a young girl, and I still struggle with it. I'm way better at it now. I think it got until my 30s, really, when I was able to start incorporating some kind of more relaxed ways of speaking. But as a child, I spoke very formally, and it just seemed like the most unnatural thing in the world for me to use any slang, because I just felt really exposed by it, really. I just felt that people would be able to really zone in and hear how uncomfortable I was in saying these phrases. So I just chose not to. So because I wasn't using these slang words and phrases, that still singled me out because it was unusual behaviour. So yeah, I just found it really difficult to say any of this kind of stuff, really. So at number 10, it's good old sensory issues. And for me, it was wearing anything tight around my neck, and I'm still not able to do it. It absolutely freaks me out, just the thought of it. I feel like I'm just getting strangled. And of course, it's really difficult to wear a school uniform with a shirt and tie if you've got real kind of sensitive areas going on around your neck. And I really struggled with that, and I would remove my tie as often as I could because I just found it almost unbearable. It still freaks me out, just the thought of it, really. At number 11, I'm just going to mention toys here. And yeah, I just really struggled with a lot of toys when I was a young girl. And I remember in particular one year I was given a baby doll and a cot one Christmas, and I think my mum was actually really excited to give this gift to me, but I was just really confused by it. I just had no idea what to do with this baby doll. So I remember that I didn't want to hurt my mum's feelings, so I just carried this doll around with me for a few weeks, feigning interest in it, really. But I just was baffled by this doll and what I was supposed to do with it. And I was way more interested, actually, in making little worlds as a child. So I'd get real enjoyment actually out of getting a cardboard box and making a kind of diorama within it, really. And I remember one in particular was a record shop, and I was so proud of it once I'd completed it. I just cut out a load of little vinyl records from magazines, and yeah, just put them on kind of little stands and stuff. And I wish I had some photos of it because I really was so proud of this diorama. But yeah, I was way more invested in creating little worlds than playing with dolls, really. And I'm going to mention lining up toys here as well, because this is a behaviour that is observed quite often in autistic children, and it's certainly something that I did too. And I remember in particular, I would do this with a farmyard set that I had, although I have to say I was certainly older than a toddler at the time. And at number 12, which is going to be the last one for today, I was absolutely terrified of answering the front door. And I hated it so much that I'd get freaked out even when somebody would kind of knock on the door. And I was actually left alone quite a lot as a child. My mum died when I was 12, so invariably it meant that I was at home alone a lot, and I would absolutely be petrified of anybody knocking on the front door. So I'd just go into like survival mode really and be as quiet as I could and just wait for that person to go away. And I still hate answering the door now, to be honest. And I think this is something that's fairly common with autistic people. We don't like to be confronted with people in the here and now, really. It's something that we need to feel kind of prepared for. So anybody surprising you at the doorstep is, yeah, not going to be the most welcome, really, for autistic people. So yeah, this has been something that I've always struggled with throughout my life, really. So there we have it. There are my 12 unusual traits or behaviours that I had as a young girl, which I can now attribute to being autistic, albeit an undiagnosed autistic girl. But I just think it's an interesting process to really try and delve into your whole life, really, and see where perhaps your behaviours have been a little different to the norm, really. And I'm sure there are very many other traits that will spring to mind at some point. I've just got dreadful memories, so that's what I've come up with today. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know which ones that you can relate to. I'd love to hear. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.